just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I am standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis.
You bet we are.
The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilized energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change. But some mistakes were made. Not born of ill will or bad intentions. Quite the opposite, in fact. But mistakes nonetheless. And I have been elected as leader of my party and your Prime Minister, in part, to fix them. And that work begins immediately. I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come. But you saw me during COVID doing everything I could to protect people and businesses with schemes like furlough. There are always limits, more so now than ever. But I promise you this, I will bring that same compassion to the challenges we face today. The government I lead will not leave the next generation, your children and grandchildren, with a debt to settle that we were too weak to pay ourselves. I will unite our country, not with words, but with action. I will work day in and day out to deliver for you. This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours. I will always be grateful to Boris Johnson for his incredible achievements as Prime Minister.
What about his mistakes, Rishi?
And I treasure his warmth and generosity of spirit.
Or are you just picking on the women?
And I know he would agree that the mandate my party earned in 2019 is not the sole property of any one individual. It is a mandate that belongs to and unites all of us. And the heart of that mandate is our manifesto. I will deliver on its promise. A stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders, protecting our environment, supporting our armed forces, levelling up, and building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit, where businesses invest, innovate, and create jobs. I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are.
Do you, Rishi?
And I understand too that I have work to do to restore trust after all that has happened.
Bring back Labour.
All I can say is that I am not daunted. I know the high office I have accepted, and I hope to live up to its demands. But when the opportunity to serve comes along, you cannot question the moment, only your willingness. So I stand here before you, ready to lead our country into the future, to put your needs above politics, to reach out and build a government that represents the very best traditions of my party. Together, we can achieve incredible things. We will create a future worthy of the sacrifices so many have made, and fill tomorrow and every day thereafter with hope. Thank you.
You've promised my children. We shall see. They'll only be better off when Labour gets in power. You guys have messed it up. Goodbye. But congratulations, Rishi. I prefer you. You are quite a nice person. I liked Liz too. She was a nice person. Aww. Happy Diwali yesterday, Rishi. Come to Hope Church Vauxhall. See how the people live. Do not remove universal credit benefits. You will not be popular. Okay, I'm going to pray for you, Rishi. Father God, I pray that you grant Rishi
there
wisdom.
we have it. Rishi
In
Sunak
Jesus'
walks in
name,
through the door
Amen.
of number 10, and we can hear, you can probably just about still hear him being clapped as the door is closed behind him to begin with his work as Prime Minister, as Robert and I wander back into frame here. So many fascinating things about that. I don't know where to start. I mean, like, number
here
one,
comes
I mean,
Robert
just
Peston,
make a
who
note.
went to my uni.
Nobody here in the street
Now, his opinion
at
is
all to welcome
amazing.
him. No office staff, no
Come on,
number 10
Robert, speak
staff,
up.
no supporters.
I want to do jubilation. I mean, it's very interesting. He
No,
wants
it's
to say, I'm
fascinating.
getting on with the
One
job.
man walking up a street on his own.
Speak
You're
up,
right.
Rob.
He has
Robert
got supporters,
Peston.
but he decided he didn't want to do any of that triumph stuff. And I thought, the most important things I felt he said was, right now our country is facing a profound economic crisis. He is not
He went to
he's
my
not
uni.
understating
Hashtag London
the
South Bank
magnitude
University.
of the problems he faces. He says difficult decisions to come. We've been talking about those. Spending cuts, tax rises, we're going to hear about in only just a few days. And then I thought a very important phrase. I have work to do to restore trust after all that has happened. So, I mean, he's talking about the damage that has been done to the reputation of this Conservative government. First of all, by what many people saw as Boris Johnson's approach, that he was not honest enough, particularly about those parties in Downing
Speak up,
Street, but
Robert.
across the piece, a whole series of occasions where people felt they just could not trust Boris Johnson. And then that shambolic mini budget, which has made the economic crisis that he referred to worse than it needed to be. So that was all about, we were talking about just before he arrived, and we were talking about how, he just wants to get on with the job.
Yeah, I mean, that was not Flash, just Gordon to me all over again. It was the kind of, this is a guy, he's a serious guy for serious times walking in. I mean, I thought really interesting, you said that when you were doing that discussion on your show, no one mentioned furlough. Interesting that he referenced furlough there, I thought.
Well, and because he also is worried that people felt under Liz Truss that the party had forgotten about compassion.
Yeah, and he referenced compassion quite a few times, didn't he? And made a point, I'm here for you, I will be helping you. And so, I mean, that was a base he particularly seemed keen to hit as well.
I mean, so there were two other things which are also very significant. One was he said he would deliver that manifesto from 2019, the one that Boris Johnson sold to the nation, but he said he was fully committed to it in a way that we didn't really hear that often from Liz Truss. She was, her plan to, accelerate growth would have involved quite a lot of breaches of the manifesto. One other really important phrase, which she almost never used, levelling up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there were two things that Boris Johnson was associated with. One was getting Brexit done. Some would say that work is still ongoing, although he obviously took us out of the EU. There are still very complex negotiations going on with the European Union. But he also pledged to narrow the wealth and income gap between North and South, between rich and poor. But we didn't really hear very much from that, about that at all from Liz Truss. She actually said in terms that so long as people at the bottom were getting richer, she didn't care whether the gap between rich and poor got wider. He just said he does. That he actually wants to recommit to that Boris Johnson aim of making this country, in their view, a fairer place by narrowing the wealth and income gaps.
Okay, much more to pick up in a minute, but if you're joining us, we are on air with a special programme as Rishi Sunak becomes, or indeed has just become, Prime Minister. In the last 15 minutes or so, he arrived here at number 10 and addressed the nation.
I will work day in and day out to deliver for you. This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level.
His premiership is already one of firsts. Mr. Sunak has become the King's first PM, and he becomes, or the first one he's appointed to be more precise, and he becomes our first Prime Minister of South Asian heritage as well. As a rough summary, we have seen this morning Liz Truss